The trading station Nexus 7 buzzed with activity, as beings from dozens of worlds conducted business in the vast marketplace. The air recyclers worked overtime to handle the mix of atmospheres needed by different species, creating a slight haze that hung over the crowded corridors. Merchant stalls lined the walkways, selling everything from exotic spices to advanced weapon systems. Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison walked through the crowd with the easy confidence of a man who had seen combat on 3 different worlds. His dress blue uniform was crisp and clean, the red and gold Marine Corps emblem gleaming on his chest. He wasn't on duty today, just passing through on his way to his next assignment aboard the UES Endeavour, humanity's newest deep space cruiser. The Marine Corps had only been operating in galactic space for 5 years. Ever since first contact with the Galactic Coalition, Earth had been invited to join after proving themselves in a border conflict with the aggressive Hegemony Empire. Now human soldiers served alongside alien troops across the galaxy, though not everyone was happy about the newcomers. Jake stopped at a food vendor run by a friendly Altarian, whose blue skin shimmered under the station's artificial lighting. The creature's forearms moved quickly as it prepared something that smelled like barbecue, but probably wasn't made from any Earth animal. Jake had learned not to ask too many questions about alien food. Some things were better left unknown. "1 Terran safe meal, please," Jake said, placing his credit chip on the counter. The Altarian's translator device converted his words into musical tones that the alien could understand. "Ah, human soldier," the vendor replied through its translator, which gave it a mechanical-sounding voice. "You are far from your homeworld, yes? This station sees many humans now. Some good, some—" The alien paused, clearly choosing its words carefully. "Some make others angry." Before Jake could ask what that meant, a commotion erupted near the central plaza. Raised voices carried over the normal marketplace chatter, and Jake could see a crowd forming around something. His military training kicked in automatically. Where there was trouble, someone might need help. The Altarian vendor shook its head sadly. "Probably more fighting. Happens too much these days. Different species, different ways. Hard to live together in peace." Jake thanked the vendor for the food and made his way toward the disturbance. As he got closer, he could make out what was happening. A group of Zephyrian soldiers in their distinctive black and silver armor had surrounded a young human couple. The woman looked terrified while her companion, clearly a civilian, stood protectively in front of her. Zephyrians were tall, reptilian beings with green-scaled skin and yellow eyes that could see in multiple light spectrums. They were known throughout the galaxy as excellent soldiers, but they had a reputation for looking down on other species. Their homeworld was one of the oldest members of the Galactic Coalition, and they often acted like they owned the place. "Your kind does not belong here," the lead Zephyrian was saying, his words hissing through sharp teeth. This station was built by real civilizations, not primitive apes who just learned to leave their dirtball planet. The human man's face was red with anger, but Jake could see he was smart enough not to start a fight he couldn't win. "We have just as much right to be here as anyone else," the civilian said, his voice shaking slightly. "The Coalition Charter guarantees safe passage for all member species." The Zephyrian soldier laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Treaties and papers mean nothing when you lack the strength to enforce them. Your species is weak, soft. You have no business among real warriors." Other aliens in the crowd were watching but not interfering. Some looked uncomfortable with what they were seeing, but the Zephyrians had a reputation for being quick to violence. Nobody wanted to become their next target. Jake finished his alien meal and tossed the container into a recycler. He could walk away. This wasn't his fight, and getting involved could cause diplomatic problems. But he had taken an oath to protect civilians, and that oath didn't come with exceptions for being off-duty or in alien space. The Marine sergeant started moving through the crowd, politely but firmly making his way toward the confrontation. His uniform drew some attention and a few aliens pointed him out to their companions. Word spread quickly that another human was approaching, a military one. "Look," the civilian was saying to the Zephyrian soldiers, "we don't want any trouble. We're just here on business, same as everyone else." "Your business is finished," the lead Zephyrian snarled. "Leave now or we will remove you ourselves." The woman grabbed her companion's arm. "Please, David, let's just go. It's not worth it." But the Zephyrian wasn't done. "Yes, run away like the cowards your species is known to be." Perhaps next time you will think twice before venturing into space meant for your betters. Jake was close enough now to see the details of the situation. 5 Zephyrian soldiers, all armed with standard Coalition energy weapons, surrounding 2 unarmed human civilians. The odds were terrible, and the aliens had every advantage except one. They didn't know that a United States Marine was about 10 feet away and getting closer. The lead Zephyrian noticed Jake approaching and turned to face him. "Another human," the alien said with obvious disgust. "How many of your kind have infested this station today?" Jake stopped walking and stood at ease, hands clasped behind his back in a relaxed military posture. "Just passing through," he said calmly. "Couldn't help but notice you folks seemed to be having a discussion." "This does not concern you, soldier," the Zephyrian replied. "We are simply educating these civilians about proper behavior in civilized space." The Marine sergeant nodded thoughtfully, as if considering the alien's words. "I see, and what exactly did they do that needed correcting?" "They exist," another Zephyrian said, drawing laughter from his companions. "Their very presence here is an insult to proper order." Jake Morrison kept his expression neutral, but inside he was measuring distances and calculating angles. 5 hostile aliens, each about 7 feet tall and probably weighing close to 300 pounds. Their armor looked impressive, but he could see the joints and weak points that any good Marine would notice. More importantly, they were overconfident and standing too close together. "Interesting philosophy," Jake said, his voice still calm and conversational. "So you're saying that being human is somehow against Coalition law?" The lead Zephyrian stepped closer, trying to use his height advantage to intimidate the Marine. "Coalition law is whatever we say it is, ape. Your species has been members for 5 years. Mine has been here for 5 centuries. We know how things really work." Jake noticed that more aliens were gathering to watch the confrontation. Word was spreading through the marketplace that something big was about to happen. He recognized several species in the crowd: Altarians, Centauri traders, even a few Vegan diplomats in their flowing robes. All of them were watching to see how the human would respond to Zephyrian aggression. 5 centuries, Jake repeated, nodding as if impressed. "That's a long time. You must have learned a lot about fighting in all those years." The Zephyrian's yellow eyes narrowed, "More than your primitive species could comprehend. We were conquering star systems when your ancestors were still living in caves." "Probably true," Jake agreed. "But you know what's funny about experience? Sometimes when you've been doing something the same way for a really long time, you forget that other people might have learned different methods." One of the other Zephyrian soldiers was getting impatient. "Enough talk," he hissed. "Let us show these humans what happens when they forget their place." The lead Zephyrian held up a clawed hand. "Patience, Korvax. I am enjoying this conversation. It is not often we get to educate a human soldier before we humble him." Jake glanced at the 2 civilians who were huddled together near a merchant stall. The woman was recording everything on her personal device. Smart move. Whatever happened next, there would be evidence of who started it. "Tell me something," Jake said to the lead Zephyrian. "In all those centuries of experience, did anyone ever teach you about human military doctrine?" The alien laughed, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Your military is a joke. We have studied your combat records. Crude weapons, primitive tactics, no understanding of proper warfare. The only reason the Coalition accepted your species was because you showed some small talent for dying bravely." "Huh," Jake said, scratching his chin thoughtfully. "See, that's interesting because our records show something different. They show that in every major engagement between human forces and other species, we've had a pretty good track record. Against inferior opponents," the Zephyrian snarled. "Pirates and raiders, not real soldiers." "Maybe," Jake conceded. "But here's the thing about Marines specifically, hon. We have this saying: improvise, adapt, and overcome. It means we're pretty good at figuring out solutions to new problems." The crowd was getting larger now, and Jake could see security forces in their blue uniforms pushing through the masses. Station security was made up of representatives from different Coalition species, but they moved slowly when it came to disputes between member races. Nobody wanted to be accused of favoritism. "Your philosophical discussion is amusing," the lead Zephyrian said, "but it changes nothing. You are 1 against 5, and we are seasoned warriors. If you interfere with our business here, you will share the fate of these other humans." Jake looked around at the crowd, noting the positions of exits and potential weapons. The marketplace was full of tools and equipment that could be useful in a fight, but he hoped it wouldn't come to that. Still, his hands hung loose at his sides, ready to move quickly if needed. "You know what?" Jake said, seeming to come to a decision. "You're absolutely right. 5 against 1 isn't fair odds." The Zephyrian leader smiled, thinking the human was about to back down. "Finally, some wisdom. Take your civilians and leave this place. Do not return." Jake shook his head slowly. "No, I mean it's not fair to you. See, I'm a United States Marine, and we have another saying, 1 Marine is worth 5 of anyone else. But I try not to be arrogant about it." The alien's smile vanished, replaced by a look of pure rage. "You dare mock us? You insignificant creature, I will tear you apart with my bare claws." "Probably not," Jake said matter-of-factly. "But you're welcome to try. Fair warning, though. I've been having a really long week, and I'm not in the mood to play games." The lead Zephyrian began to circle Jake, his companions spreading out to surround the Marine. Their claws extended from their fingertips, and Jake could see the energy weapons on their belts. They were preparing for violence, but they were making a classic mistake. They were playing by their own rules and assuming their opponent would do the same. "Last chance, human," the Zephyrian leader hissed. "Apologize for your disrespect, and perhaps we will allow you to crawl away with only minor injuries." Jake's response was delivered in the same calm, conversational tone he had been using throughout the encounter. "Counteroffer. You apologize to these civilians, move along, and pretend this never happened. Otherwise, things are going to get educational real fast." The alien's yellow eyes blazed with fury. "Educational? What could a primitive ape possibly teach a Zephyrian warrior?" Jake's stance shifted slightly, weight moving to the balls of his feet. To most observers, he still looked relaxed and casual, but any human military personnel would have recognized the change. The Marine had just gone from diplomatic mode to combat ready. "Oh, lots of things," Jake said, his voice dropping to a quieter register. "For example, the difference between looking dangerous and actually being dangerous, the importance of situational awareness, why overconfidence kills more soldiers than enemy fire." The Zephyrian leader snarled and raised his clawed hand, clearly about to strike. "Enough, I will silence your insolent tongue permanently." "And most importantly," Jake continued, as if the alien hadn't spoken, "why you should never ever pick a fight with a Marine unless you're absolutely sure you can finish it." The lead Zephyrian raised his foot high, planning to deliver a devastating kick that would send the human flying across the marketplace. It was a move that had worked countless times before against other species. Zephyrian legs were incredibly powerful, and their clawed feet could tear through most armor. The alien was so confident that he telegraphed the attack, taking a full second to wind up for maximum impact. That was his first mistake. Jake Morrison had been in combat situations on 3 different worlds, fought everything from human pirates to mechanical war drones. He had trained in hand-to-hand combat since he was 18 years old, and the Marine Corps had refined those skills into something approaching an art form. More importantly, he had learned to read body language across multiple species during his years in galactic space. The Zephyrian's kick was powerful, fast, and would have crippled most opponents. But it was also predictable, straightforward, and committed the attacker to a single line of movement. Jake stepped aside at the last possible moment, letting the alien's clawed foot pass harmlessly through the air where he had been standing. The Zephyrian's yellow eyes widened in shock as his kick met nothing but empty space. His momentum carried him forward, off balance and vulnerable. That was when Jake demonstrated the second principle of Marine Corps combat doctrine. When your enemy makes a mistake, exploit it immediately and without mercy. Jake's right hand shot out in a precise strike that caught the alien just below the rib cage. The blow was delivered with surgical precision, hitting a nerve cluster that every Marine learned about in xenobiology class. The Zephyrian doubled over, gasping for air and momentarily paralyzed by the unexpected pain. Before the other aliens could react, Jake flowed into his next move. His left hand grabbed the lead Zephyrian's extended arm, using the alien's own weight and momentum against him. A simple hip throw, one of the first techniques, taught to Marine recruits, sent the 300-pound warrior flying through the air to crash into a nearby merchant stall. The whole sequence took less than 3 seconds. The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs and excited chatter. Most of the aliens present had never seen Zephyrian soldiers defeated so quickly and efficiently. The remaining 4 warriors stood frozen for a moment, unable to process what had just happened to their leader. Jake straightened his uniform jacket and checked his sleeve for wrinkles. Like I said, he commented mildly. Educational. The second Zephyrian, the one called Korvax, snarled and reached for his energy weapon. You will pay for that, human scum. But Jake was already moving. Marine Corps training emphasized speed and aggression. Control the tempo of the fight. Never let your enemy recover from their initial shock. As Korvax's hand closed on his weapon, Jake covered the distance between them in 2 quick steps. A textbook disarm technique, learned during countless hours of practice on Earth and refined in real combat situations, relieved the alien of his weapon before he could draw it. Jake's knee came up sharply, finding the same nerve cluster he had targeted on the first Zephyrian. Korvax folded like a house of cards, all the fight going out of him in an instant. 2 down, Jake observed, checking his watch as if he was timing a training exercise. Anyone else feeling educational today? The third Zephyrian was smarter than his companions. Instead of rushing in blindly, he tried to circle around and attack from an angle. It was good tactical thinking. But he made the mistake of assuming that human reaction times were slower than Zephyrian ones. Jake tracked the alien's movement with his eyes while appearing to focus on the other 2 soldiers. When the third Zephyrian thought he had achieved surprise and lunged forward with extended claws, Jake was ready for him. A simple sidestep followed by a palm strike to the solar plexus sent the alien stumbling backward. Jake followed up with a leg sweep that took the Zephyrian's feet out from under him, sending him crashing to the ground. A gentle but firm application of pressure to another nerve cluster ensured that the alien would stay down for a while. 3, Jake counted, brushing dust off his uniform. Math was never my best subject, but I think that leaves 2. The remaining Zephyrian soldiers exchanged uncertain glances. Their leader was groaning in a pile of broken merchandise. Their weapons expert was doubled over in pain, and their tactics specialist was unconscious on the floor. The humans they had planned to intimidate were recording everything, and the crowd was watching with fascination. Perhaps, one of them said carefully, we should reconsider our approach to this situation. Jake nodded approvingly. Now that's the kind of tactical thinking I like to see. Shows you're learning. But the last Zephyrian was either braver or stupider than his companion. With a roar of rage, he charged straight at Jake with his claws extended, abandoning all pretense of skill or strategy in favor of pure aggression. It was exactly the kind of attack that Marine training was designed to counter. Jake waited until the alien was completely committed to his charge, then stepped to the side and helped the Zephyrian continue his journey toward the ground. A carefully applied chokehold, non-lethal but highly effective, put the alien to sleep in seconds. 4, Jake announced, then looked at the remaining soldier. I don't suppose you want to make this a clean sweep? The last Zephyrian held up his hands in surrender. I believe we may have underestimated human combat capabilities, he said formally. Perhaps it would be wise to withdraw and reconsider our position. Outstanding, Jake replied with a smile. I like an alien who can learn from experience. Why don't you collect your friends and find somewhere else to conduct your business? I'm sure these civilians would appreciate some space. The conscious Zephyrian began helping his companions to their feet. The lead alien was still shaky but conscious, his yellow eyes burning with humiliation and rage. As they prepared to leave, he looked back at Jake with pure hatred. This is not over, human, he hissed. You may have won today, but the Zephyrian Empire has a long memory. We do not forget insults. Jake's expression never changed from its friendly, professional mask. Looking forward to it, he said cheerfully. But next time, maybe bring more friends. 5 wasn't nearly enough. As the beaten Zephyrian soldiers limped away from the marketplace, the crowd began to disperse. Some aliens lingered to examine the damaged merchant stall, while others followed the warriors with their eyes, clearly hoping to see what would happen next. Jake Morrison straightened his dress blue uniform and turned his attention to the 2 human civilians who had started the whole incident. The woman was still recording everything on her personal device, but her hands were shaking slightly. Her companion, David, looked like he was trying to process what he had just witnessed. Neither of them seemed to know quite what to say. You folks all right? Jake asked, his voice returning to the friendly conversational tone he had used before the fight. Nobody got hurt? David found his voice first. We're fine, thanks to you. I'm David Chen, and this is my wife Sarah. We're environmental engineers working on the atmospheric systems for the new colony on Kepler 442b. Jake nodded and shook their hands. Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison, United States Marine Corps. Pleased to meet you both, though I wish it had been under better circumstances. Sarah Chen lowered her recording device and took a deep breath. I got everything on video, she said. The whole thing from when they first approached us until they left. They started it, everyone can see that. Smart thinking, Jake agreed. Evidence is important when things go sideways. What exactly did you folks do to get their attention in the first place? David looked embarrassed. Nothing, really. We were just having lunch at one of the restaurants in the food court. Sarah made a comment about how the artificial gravity on the station felt different from Earth normal, and one of the Zephyrians overheard her. He said something about humans complaining about everything, and when I told him to mind his own business, they decided to make it their business, Jake finished. Yeah, that sounds about right. Zephyrians have a reputation for being touchy about territorial issues. They tend to think that everywhere they go becomes their space. More aliens were approaching now, not to cause trouble, but to satisfy their curiosity about what had happened. Jake recognized several species from his military briefings, a group of insectoid Mantari traders, their compound eyes glittering with interest, a pair of vegan diplomats in their flowing ceremonial robes, even a few Centauri merchants who had abandoned their stalls to get a closer look. An Altarian female with pale blue skin and silver facial markings stepped forward from the crowd. Jake could see from her uniform that she was some kind of station official, probably security or administrative. Excuse me, she said, her translator giving her voice a melodic quality. I am Senior Administrator Kelthera. I witnessed the entire incident and I wanted to thank you for your restraint in dealing with the situation. Jake raised an eyebrow. Restraint? Ma'am, I just put 4 alien soldiers on the ground in about 15 seconds. Kelthera's skin shifted to a slightly darker blue. Jake had learned that this indicated amusement in Altarians. Yes, but you could have killed them all just as easily. Zephyrian anatomy is well known, and you struck nerve clusters that would cause pain and temporary paralysis rather than permanent damage. For a species with your reputation for violence, that shows considerable restraint. Our reputation for violence? Sarah Chen asked, looking confused. What does that mean? The Altarian administrator looked uncomfortable, her skin taking on a greenish tinge. Perhaps I spoke out of turn. It is simply that human military forces have gained a certain reputation. Throughout the galaxy in recent years, Jake was curious now. What kind of reputation? Before Kelthera could answer, one of the Mantari traders clicked forward on its 6 legs. Its translator produced a buzzing electronic voice that somehow managed to convey excitement. The humans are known as the Death Worlders, the insectoid alien said. Your species evolved on a planet so dangerous that it would kill most galactic life forms within hours. This makes you incredibly resilient and adaptable to hostile environments. Another alien, a tall, thin vegan with gray skin and large black eyes, glided closer. More than that, it said in a whispering voice that needed no translation. Human soldiers have demonstrated tactical flexibility that other species find disturbing. You adapt to new situations faster than our computer models predict. Jake was beginning to understand why the Zephyrians had been so hostile. Let me guess, some of the older coalition species aren't too happy about the new kids on the block. That is a very diplomatic way to phrase it, Kelthera agreed. The Zephyrian Empire in particular has had difficulty adjusting to human military capabilities. They pride themselves on being the coalition's finest warriors, and recent events have challenged that assumption. David Chen looked back and forth between the aliens. What recent events? The Mantari traders' compound eyes focused on the humans. The Battle of Rigel Station. Human forces defeated a hegemony fleet twice their size, using tactics that no other coalition species had ever attempted. The enemy expected conventional warfare and instead faced something they had never encountered before. Human creativity, the vegan added softly. Your species does not think like other galactic races. Where we see established patterns and proper procedures, humans see opportunities for innovation. Jake was starting to feel uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. He hadn't come to the trading station to discuss military strategy with alien civilians. Look, I appreciate the history lesson, but I just helped out some fellow humans who were in trouble. It's not really that complicated. But Sarah Chen was looking at him with new understanding. That's exactly what they're talking about, isn't it? You didn't follow any standard protocol for dealing with superior numbers. You just adapted to the situation and found a way to win. Marines are trained to solve problems, Jake said simply. Sometimes the solution involves diplomacy, sometimes it involves force. Today it involved a little of both. Kelthera's skin shifted to a warm golden color. This is why many species both respect and fear humanity. Your soldiers do not think in terms of impossible odds or acceptable losses. They think in terms of finding a way to accomplish the mission. Every species has good soldiers, Jake protested. Yes, the vegan diplomat agreed. But human soldiers are different. Other species train for specific scenarios and follow established doctrine. Humans improvise, adapt, and overcome, as you demonstrated here today. The crowd was growing larger again, and Jake could see more station security forces approaching. It was probably time to extract himself from the situation before it became an even bigger spectacle. Well, this has been educational, he said, unconsciously echoing his earlier comment to the Zephyrians. But I should probably get moving. My transport leaves in a few hours, and I still need to check in with Station Command. David and Sarah Chen both thanked him again, and several of the alien bystanders expressed their appreciation for his intervention. As Jake prepared to leave, Kelthera approached him one more time. "Staff Sergeant Morrison," she said quietly, "you should know that word of this incident will spread quickly throughout the station and beyond. The Zephyrians will not forget what happened here today." Jake nodded. "Neither will I, ma'am." "Neither will I." As the beaten Zephyrian soldiers limped away from the marketplace, the crowd began to disperse. Some aliens lingered to examine the damaged merchant stall, while others followed the warriors with their eyes, clearly hoping to see what would happen next. Jake Morrison straightened his dress blue uniform and turned his attention to the two human civilians who had started the whole incident. The woman was still recording everything on her personal device, but her hands were shaking slightly. Her companion, David, looked like he was trying to process what he had just witnessed. Neither of them seemed to know quite what to say. "You folks all right?" Jake asked, his voice returning to the friendly conversational tone he had used before the fight. "Nobody got hurt?" David found his voice first. "We're fine, thanks to you. I'm David Chen, and this is my wife Sarah. We're environmental engineers working on the atmospheric systems for the new colony on Kepler 442b. Jake nodded and shook their hands. "Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison, United States Marine Corps. Pleased to meet you both, though I wish it had been under better circumstances." Sarah Chen lowered her recording device and took a deep breath. "I got everything on video," she said. "The whole thing from when they first approached us until they left. They started it, everyone can see that." "Smart thinking," Jake agreed. "Evidence is important when things go sideways." "What exactly did you folks do to get their attention in the first place?" David looked embarrassed. "Nothing, really. We were just having lunch at one of the restaurants in the food court." Sarah made a comment about how the artificial gravity on the station felt different from Earth normal, and one of the Zephyrians overheard her. "He said something about humans complaining about everything, and when I told him to mind his own business, they decided to make it their business," Jake finished. "Yeah, that sounds about right. Zephyrians have a reputation for being touchy about territorial issues. They tend to think that everywhere they go becomes their space. More aliens were approaching now, not to cause trouble, but to satisfy their curiosity about what had happened." Jake recognized several species from his military briefings, a group of insectoid Mantari traders, their compound eyes glittering with interest, a pair of vegan diplomats in their flowing ceremonial robes, even a few Centauri merchants who had abandoned their stalls to get a closer look. An Altarian female with pale blue skin and silver facial markings stepped forward from the crowd. Jake could see from her uniform that she was some kind of station official, probably security or administrative. "Excuse me," she said, her translator giving her voice a melodic quality. "I am Senior Administrator Kelthera. I witnessed the entire incident and I wanted to thank you for your restraint in dealing with the situation." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Restraint? Ma'am, I just put 4 alien soldiers on the ground in about 15 seconds. Kelthera's skin shifted to a slightly darker blue. Jake had learned that this indicated amusement in Altarians. "Yes, but you could have killed them all just as easily. Zephyrian anatomy is well known, and you struck nerve clusters that would cause pain and temporary paralysis rather than permanent damage. For a species with your reputation for violence, that shows considerable restraint." "Our reputation for violence?" Sarah Chen asked, looking confused. "What does that mean?" The Altarian administrator looked uncomfortable, her skin taking on a greenish tinge. "Perhaps I spoke out of turn. It is simply that human military forces have gained a certain reputation throughout the galaxy in recent years. Jake was curious now. What kind of reputation? Before Kelthera could answer, one of the Mantari traders clicked forward on its 6 legs. Its translator produced a buzzing electronic voice that somehow managed to convey excitement. The humans are known as the Death Worlders, the insectoid alien said. Your species evolved on a planet so dangerous that it would kill most galactic life forms within hours. This makes you incredibly resilient and adaptable to hostile environments. Another alien, a tall, thin vegan with gray skin and large black eyes, glided closer. More than that, it said in a whispering voice that needed no translation. Human soldiers have demonstrated tactical flexibility that other species find disturbing. You adapt to new situations faster than our computer models predict. Jake was beginning to understand why the Zephyrians had been so hostile. Let me guess, some of the older Coalition species aren't too happy about the new kids on the block. That is a very diplomatic way to phrase it, Kelthera agreed. The Zephyrian Empire in particular has had difficulty adjusting to human military capabilities. They pride themselves on being the Coalition's finest warriors, and recent events have challenged that assumption. David Chen looked back and forth between the aliens. What recent events? The Mantari traders' compound eyes focused on the humans. The Battle of Rigel Station. Human forces defeated a hegemony fleet twice their size, using tactics that no other Coalition species had ever attempted. The enemy expected conventional warfare and instead faced something they had never encountered before. Human creativity, the Vegan added softly. Your species does not think like other galactic races. Where we see established patterns and proper procedures, humans see opportunities for innovation. Jake was starting to feel uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. He hadn't come to the trading station to discuss military strategy with alien civilians. Look, I appreciate the history lesson, but I just helped out some fellow humans who were in trouble. It's not really that complicated. But Sarah Chen was looking at him with new understanding. That's exactly what they're talking about, isn't it? You didn't follow any standard protocol for dealing with superior numbers. You just adapted to the situation and found a way to win. Marines are trained to solve problems, Jake said simply. Sometimes the solution involves diplomacy. Sometimes it involves force. Today it involved a little of both. Kelthera's skin shifted to a warm golden color. This is why many species both respect and fear humanity. Your soldiers do not think in terms of impossible odds or acceptable losses. They think in terms of finding a way to accomplish the mission. Every species has good soldiers, Jake protested. Yes, the vegan diplomat agreed. But human soldiers are different. Other species train for specific scenarios and follow established doctrine. Humans improvise, adapt, and overcome, as you demonstrated here today. The crowd was growing larger again, and Jake could see more station security forces approaching. It was probably time to extract himself from the situation before it became an even bigger spectacle. Well, this has been educational, he said, unconsciously echoing his earlier comment to the Zephyrians. But I should probably get moving. My transport leaves in a few hours, and I still need to check in with Station Command. David and Sarah Chen both thanked him again, and several of the alien bystanders expressed their appreciation for his intervention. As Jake prepared to leave, Kelthera approached him one more time. Staff Sergeant Morrison, she said quietly, you should know that word of this incident will spread quickly throughout the station and beyond. The Zephyrians will not forget what happened here today. Jake nodded. Neither will I, ma'am. Neither will I. The combat arena on Nexus 7 had been hastily converted from a cargo bay, but it still managed to look impressive. Temporary seating had been installed for official observers, and a regulation fighting circle had been marked out on the deck plating. Medical teams from 3 different species stood ready with their equipment, and recording devices captured every angle for transmission throughout Coalition space. Jake Morrison stood in the human preparation area, checking his gear one final time. The combat rules called for non-lethal energy weapons set to stun, along with basic protective armor that would prevent serious injury while still allowing the contest to have meaningful stakes. He wore lightweight tactical gear that felt familiar and comfortable after years of training in combat. Captain Rodriguez was acting as his second, providing tactical advice and moral support. Remember, she said quietly, this isn't just about you anymore. Every human serving in coalition forces is going to be judged by what happens in the next few minutes. No pressure, Jake muttered, adjusting the settings on his energy pistol. The weapon was a standard coalition design that fired focused energy pulses, capable of stunning most galactic species. 3 solid hits anywhere on the body would register as a victory. Ambassador Veltar approached from the observation area, his flowing robes making him look like some kind of alien wizard. "The Zephyrian champion has arrived," he reported. "His name is Korvax Zelthara, and he is considered one of their finest warriors. He has won over 50 formal duels and has never been defeated in single combat." "Great," Jake said dryly. "What else should I know about him?" "He is 7.5 feet tall, weighs approximately 320 pounds, and has enhanced reflexes due to Zephyrian genetic modification," Veltar continued matter-of-factly. "He is also extremely angry about yesterday's marketplace incident, which may work either for or against you." Captain Rodriguez frowned. "Angry how?" "Because his buddies got embarrassed." "Because," Veltar said carefully, "Staff Sergeant Morrison defeated his younger brother yesterday. Korvax Zelthara was one of the 5 soldiers in the marketplace. This duel is now a matter of family honor as well as species pride." Jake stared at the ambassador. "You couldn't have mentioned that earlier? Would it have changed your decision to accept the challenge?" Jake thought about it for a moment, then shook his head. "Probably not, but it would have been nice to know what I was getting into." A chime sounded throughout the arena, indicating that the formal combat was about to begin. Jake checked his equipment one last time, then walked toward the fighting circle. The crowd of observers included representatives from dozens of coalition species, all eager to see how this unprecedented challenge would play out. The Zephyrian champion was already waiting in the center of the arena, and Jake had to admit that he was an impressive sight. Korvax Zelthara stood nearly 8 feet tall in his combat armor, his green-scaled skin gleaming under the arena lights. His yellow eyes tracked Jake's approach with obvious hatred, and his clawed hands flexed around his energy weapon. Station Administrator Kelthara served as the official referee, her blue skin taking on a formal silver tinge as she prepared to begin the proceedings. "This formal combat is conducted under Coalition Regulation 847, governing disputes between member species," she announced, her voice carried throughout the arena by the station's communication system. "The challenge has been issued by the Zephyrian Empire, represented by Champion Korvax Zelthara. The challenge has been accepted by the Terran Federation, represented by Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison. Combat will continue until one participant achieves 3 verified strikes against his opponent, or until medical personnel determine that continuing would pose a serious risk to either combatant." Jake and Korvac faced each other across the fighting circle, each holding their energy weapon at the ready. The Zephyrian's hatred was almost palpable, but Jake forced himself to remain calm and focused. This was just another mission, albeit one with unusually high stakes. "Combatants, are you ready?" Kelthara asked. "Ready," Jake replied simply. "For the honor of the Zephyrian Empire and the insult to my family," Korvac snarled. "I am ready. Begin!" Korvac immediately charged forward, his longer legs covering the distance between them in seconds. His energy weapon came up in a classic Zephyrian combat pose, designed to deliver maximum stopping power at close range. It was textbook form, exactly what Jake had expected, which was why Jake wasn't there when the alien's first shot arrived. Rolling to the side, Jake came up in a prone firing position and squeezed off 3 quick shots. 2 missed as Korvac twisted away with impressive agility, but the third caught the Zephyrian in the shoulder. The arena's scoring system immediately registered the hit. "First strike to the Terran representative," Kelthara announced. Korvac roared in frustration and continued his charge, trying to use his size and reach advantage to overwhelm the smaller human. But Jake was already moving again, using the arena's dimensions to stay out of reach while looking for his next opportunity. The Zephyrian's next series of shots were accurate and powerful, but they all struck empty air. Jake had studied recordings of Zephyrian combat techniques during his preparation time, and he knew their preferred patterns. They were excellent marksmen and devastating in close combat, but they tended to follow established doctrine rather than adapting to unexpected situations. Jake's second shot caught Korvac in the leg as the alien tried to corner him against the arena wall. The energy pulse caused the Zephyrian to stumble, and Jake immediately capitalized on the momentary opening. "Second strike to the Terran representative," Kelthera called out. The crowd was murmuring now, clearly surprised by how the contest was developing. Most had expected the larger, more experienced Zephyrian to dominate the smaller human. Instead, they were watching a demonstration of tactical flexibility that few had seen before. Korvac was becoming desperate now, abandoning his formal training in favor of pure aggression. He charged straight at Jake, firing rapidly and trying to pin the human down with overwhelming firepower. It was a dangerous strategy that left him exposed, but it nearly worked. Jake had to dive behind one of the arena's safety barriers to avoid the barrage of energy bolts. When he came up to return fire, Korvac was already moving to flank him. The Zephyrian's shot caught Jake in the side, registering his first hit. "First strike to the Zephyrian representative," Kelthera announced. Now the real fight began. Both combatants were more cautious, circling each other and looking for openings. Korvac had learned from his earlier mistakes and was fighting more defensively, using his size and armor to absorb damage while waiting for a chance to land decisive hits. Jake, meanwhile, was analyzing his opponent's new strategy and formulating a response. The Zephyrian was good, better than his brother and friends from the marketplace, but he was still thinking in terms of established patterns. Jake decided it was time to show him something that wasn't in any tactical manual. Instead of trying to outfight Korvac using conventional methods, Jake did something completely unexpected. He holstered his weapon, picked up a piece of debris from the arena floor, and threw it at the Zephyrian's head. Korvac instinctively ducked, and in that moment of distraction, Jake drew and fired in a single fluid motion. The shot caught the alien center mass, registering as a clean hit. "Third strike to the Terran representative," Kelthera announced. Combat concluded. Victory to Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison of the Terran Federation. The arena fell silent for a moment, then erupted in excited chatter as representatives from dozens of species discussed what they had just witnessed. Jake holstered his weapon and walked over to where Korvac was struggling to his feet, the stunning effects of the energy weapons beginning to wear off. "Good fight," Jake said, extending his hand to help the alien up. "You're a hell of a lot better than your brother." Korvac stared at the offered hand for a moment, then accepted the assistance. "You fight unlike any opponent I have faced," he admitted grudgingly. "Perhaps there is more to human combat doctrine than we understood." "Maybe," Jake agreed. "Or maybe we just think about problems differently than you do." As the two warriors left the arena together, Ambassador Veltar approached Captain Rodriguez in the observation area. "I believe," he said quietly, "that this will be remembered as a significant moment in Coalition history." Rodriguez nodded, watching her marine field congratulations from alien diplomats and military observers. "Yeah," she said with a smile. "I think you're right." 3 months later, Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Endeavour, watching through the main viewport as a hegemony battle fleet retreated from the Rigel system. The latest skirmish had ended with another decisive Coalition victory, and once again, human tactics had played a crucial role in the outcome. "Enemy forces are withdrawing beyond the system perimeter," reported Lieutenant Commander Singh from the tactical station. "All Coalition vessels are reporting minimal damage and no casualties." Captain Elena Rodriguez, who had been promoted and given command of the Endeavour after the previous captain's retirement, nodded with satisfaction. "Stand down from combat alert. Signal the fleet that will maintain patrol positions for another 6 hours. Then begin the return to base." Jake had been assigned as the ship's Marine Detachment Commander after the incident on Nexus 7, a promotion that came with both increased responsibility and increased scrutiny. The video of his marketplace confrontation with the Zephyrian soldiers had spread throughout Coalition space, making him something of a celebrity among human forces and a curiosity among alien species. "Staff Sergeant," Captain Rodriguez said, approaching his station. "Report to my ready room when you're finished here. We need to discuss the new training protocols." As Jake made his way through the ship's corridors, he reflected on how much had changed since that day in the trading station marketplace. The formal combat challenge had resolved the immediate diplomatic crisis, but it had also led to broader changes in how the Coalition military operated. Human combat doctrine was now being studied and adapted by other species, while human instructors were in high demand throughout Coalition space. The Zephyrian Empire had grudgingly acknowledged human military capabilities and had even requested joint training exercises to better Understand human tactical methods. The ready room's door slid open as Jake approached, revealing Captain Rodriguez seated behind her desk with a stack of electronic reports in front of her. She looked up as he entered and gestured to a chair across from her. "Jake, we just received new orders from Coalition Command," she said without preamble. "They want us to establish a joint training facility on the frontier world of New Geneva. The facility will be used to teach human combat techniques to officers from other Coalition species." Jake settled into the offered chair. "Sounds like a big operation. What's my role in all this?" "You're going to be the chief instructor," Rodriguez replied with a slight smile. "Congratulations, you've just been promoted to gunnery sergeant. More importantly, you're going to be responsible for creating a curriculum that teaches alien officers how to think like human Marines." "Think like Marines?" Jake repeated. "Captain, I'm not sure that's something you can really teach. Most of our doctrine comes from experience and adaptation under pressure, which is exactly why you're the right person for the job," Rodriguez said. "The Coalition brass wants other species to understand why human forces have been so effective against the hegemony. They think that if they can figure out our secret, they can apply it more broadly." Jake frowned. "What if we don't have a secret? What if we're just doing what comes naturally?" "Then that's what you'll teach them," Rodriguez replied. "How to do what comes naturally to humans. How to improvise, adapt, and overcome when the standard playbook doesn't work." A soft chime indicated an incoming communication, and Rodriguez touched a control on her desk. Ambassador Veltar's image appeared on the wall display, his pale features wearing an expression that might have been amusement. "Captain Rodriguez, Gunnery Sergeant Morrison," the Vegan diplomat said in his characteristic whisper. "I wanted to congratulate you both on your recent promotion orders. The establishment of the joint training facility represents a significant milestone in Coalition military integration." "Thank you, Ambassador," Rodriguez replied. "I understand you'll be serving as the diplomatic liaison for the project?" "Indeed. It will be fascinating to observe how different species adapt to human military philosophy," Veltar said. "I have already received requests from 17 different Coalition members who wish to send officers to the new facility." Jake leaned forward. 17 species? That seems like a lot of interest for what's essentially a training school. Veltar's large black eyes focused on the Marine. "Gunnery Sergeant, what happened on Nexus 7 was reported throughout Coalition space. Your victory over Korvac Zelthara was seen as confirmation that human military capabilities are not simply a matter of superior equipment or training, but represent a fundamentally different approach to combat. And now everyone wants to learn that approach," Rodriguez added. "Precisely," the ambassador confirmed. "The hegemony empire has been expanding their territory for decades, and conventional Coalition tactics have been increasingly ineffective against their forces. Human innovations have turned the tide of several recent engagements, and other species want to understand how." Jake was quiet for a moment, processing the implications. "You're talking about changing how the entire Coalition military operates." "Change is inevitable," Veltar replied. "The question is whether that change will be guided by wisdom and cooperation, or forced upon us by external circumstances. The training facility represents an opportunity to share human tactical innovations, while learning from the experience and perspectives of other species." After the communication ended, Jake and Rodriguez discussed the practical details of the assignment. The facility would be built from scratch on a frontier world, requiring everything from basic infrastructure to specialized training equipment. Jake would have a staff of human instructors as well as alien observers and consultants. "One more thing," Rodriguez said as they concluded their meeting. "The Zephyrian Empire has specifically requested that you include their officers in the training program. Apparently Korvac Zelthara has become quite an advocate for human combat methods." Jake smiled at that. "Really? The guy I beat in the arena wants to learn from me?" "According to the report, he's been studying recordings of your fight ever since. He claims that understanding human tactical thinking is essential for effective military cooperation," Rodriguez explained. As Jake left the ready room, he found himself thinking about the strange turn his career had taken. A few months ago, he had been a simple Marine sergeant, looking forward to a routine assignment. Now he was being asked to reshape Coalition military doctrine by teaching alien officers how to think like humans. The irony wasn't lost on him. The same qualities that had made the Zephyrians view humans as dangerous and unpredictable were now being seen as the key to military success. The ability to adapt, improvise, and find unconventional solutions to tactical problems had gone from being a liability to being humanity's greatest contribution to the galactic community. Walking through the ship's corridors toward his quarters, Jake passed several alien officers who were serving aboard the Endeavour as part of the Coalition's integration program. A young Centauri lieutenant nodded respectfully as he passed, while a group of Altarian technicians paused in their work to watch him go by. Word of the marketplace incident and the subsequent formal combat had spread far beyond official channels. To these aliens, Jake represented something new and different, a human who had stood up to established galactic hierarchies and emerged victorious. More importantly, he had done so not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through quick thinking and tactical flexibility. As he reached his quarters, Jake reflected on the conversation with Ambassador Veltar. The Vegan diplomat had spoken of change as inevitable, and Jake was beginning to understand what that meant. Humanity hadn't just joined the galactic community. They had fundamentally altered it simply by being themselves. The training facility on New Geneva would be more than just a school for military tactics. It would be a place where different species learned to work together, sharing their strengths and compensating for their weaknesses. Human adaptability would be taught alongside Zephyrian discipline, vegan diplomacy, and Altarian technical expertise. Jake opened a bottle of Earth beer from his personal supply and toasted the empty room. To improvising, adapting, and overcoming, he said quietly, and to teaching everyone else how to do the same. Outside his viewport, the stars wheeled slowly as the Endeavour maintained its patrol route. Somewhere out there, the Hegemony Empire was probably planning their next move, confident in their superior numbers and established tactics. They had no idea that the galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place. Jake Morrison, formerly a simple Marine sergeant who just wanted to help some civilians in trouble, was about to become one of the most influential military instructors in galactic history, and it all started because he refused to let bullies pick on people who couldn't defend themselves. Some things, he reflected, never changed, and that was probably humanity's greatest strength of all.